All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I'm here with Dana Skaggs. Dana, welcome. So awesome to have you on the show today.
Hey, Kevin. Thank you for having me. This is going to be fun.
It is. This is going to be really good. This is going to be really good. And, I want to, before we get going, I want to just start by giving a shout out to Susan Winchester because Susan was the one who introduced you and I.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, it is, I mean, what a powerful testament to what this podcast is all about, which is relationships. And, when you get connected by someone like Susan, who you already have this amazing relationship with, who you already just love who she is and how she shows
Hmm.
up, and just have respect and admiration when she says you need to talk with Dana. Kevin, I don't know what it felt like for you, but I'm like, well, Susan, if you're saying I need to talk to Dana, I'm talking to Dana. And so,
Susan is awesome.
yeah.
I'm glad she connected us. She's wonderful.
Yes, yes, and I am too. I am absolutely, and it is so awesome to see her just making such an impact through the work that she's doing. And man, her book is getting some serious traction right now. And Susan, if you happen to be listening to this, thank you so much. You are just really loved and appreciated. So, so Dana, we'll just start. We're just gonna have a heart-to-heart conversation, and
Yep.
I'll just start by lobbing a real simple, easy question to start with. What do you do, and who do you serve, or Dana? I don't know why I called you Susan.
What do I do? I have several hats, Kevin.
Okay.
I am a psychotherapist. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology. I've had a private practice for 18 or 19 years,
Oh wow.
and I just love it, love it, love it. It's one of those things I would just do for free. Um, that is my that was my initial first love, and then I became a podcaster. I have my podcast is Phoenix and Flame.
Okay.
um the reason why I started that was because I kept hearing so many stories where people were saying, Dana, I feel like I'm the only one. And they would come into my office and they would pour out their hearts, and they would say, I just feel so alone. I feel like everybody else is doing great except for me. And I'm like,
Mm,
that's not the case. And so I wanted to be able to have a platform to let other people know, look, you're not alone. If
yeah.
you're listening to this and you're going through this, here's someone else who went through it. Here's how they got out of it. That's why it's called Phoenix and Flame. Said,
Okay.
you're not alone. And then I'm now developing a wonderful keynote speaking business, which I'm super excited about.
Okay.
Um, that's about boundaries and burnout. It's helping people sort of use my keynote is becoming the CEO of your mental boardroom, banishing
Mm,
burnout with boundaries. They call me the queen of boundaries, and there's a story behind that. I didn't ask for that name. I just kind of started being called it over the years. And so I'm extremely passionate about boundaries and training people how to use them to be able to function well. So
mhm.
now with the keynoting, it's my passion to help the people who are really high performers be able to stay that way instead of getting overwhelmed, burning out. And not making this up, Kevin, going on FMLA and ending up on my couch, right? Because they're fighting panic. They're fighting overwhelm. They're feeling nauseous and throwing up in the toilet every morning before breakfast, okay? Before they go into work. They can't deal with it. That
Yeah.
hurts my heart because they're so amazing. They're smart, they're talented, they're creative, and they don't know how to practice healthy boundaries. And so everyone is drawn to them because they're so wonderful, right? But if they don't know how to set healthy boundaries, they just keep giving out until their gas tank has tumbleweeds. And then they just end up on FMLA
Yeah.
or, you know, in the ERs. And it's just like, that hurts my heart. So I want to be able to reach out and to grow my reach, to scale my business so I can reach more people with this wonderful message of boundaries.
Yeah. So you're starting a new keynoting side of your business. Have you done much of that in the past?
I have done some. I did the keynote for a group in for a national convention in Dollywood in Sevierville, Tennessee,
Okay.
like about a year and a half ago, and that was fantastic. And then since then, I've gotten connected with some other groups, and I've done it for like the Chamber of Commerce and the young professionals, and it's just kind of growing. And that's my heart's desire right now is to be able to gain traction to get the word out where these businesses, their teams, organizations, women's groups, all these people could benefit so much from knowing how this works. Because like we could know, Kevin, that we should set a boundary with someone. Let's say we're doing all that we can do, and someone asks us to do something else because we happen to be really talented, we're really good at what we do, so we draw people to us like moths to light, right? And so if we keep saying okay, 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 eventually all our wheels are going to fall off.
You
And
bet.
so it's just like being able to reach out to these individuals, and we know that we should say no, but we don't. And that's why the CEO of the mental boardroom comes into play. Because when I'm talking to my clients and my patients, there's always a why. They know usually that they should set a boundary, but they don't. And so the question is, why aren't you? What is the hitch in the get along?
Mm.
And that's where the CEO of the mental boardroom comes into play.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. I am sure that there are a lot of people in my world that can totally relate to exactly what you're talking about,
Hmm.
and they're just kind of feeling like, just strung out in so many different directions, juggling so many balls at once.
Hmm.
And because I mean, you're right. Being an entrepreneur is not easy. Running a
No.
business is not easy.
Mm-mm.
And so, what inspires you most about the work you get to do and the impact that you get to have, Dana?
Oh wow. That that is so easy to answer, Kevin. What inspires me the most is getting to see the change in
Mhm.
someone's life. I get to witness them see that they can become stronger, that they can be freed of other people's expectations, other people's demands, other people's criticisms. It's when I started developing one of my boundaries courses, I came up with three words that I felt like best described how you feel when you know how boundaries work.
Okay.
You become stronger, you become safe, you keep yourself safe, you feel
Mhm.
safe in
Mhm.
relationships, whether it's personal or professional, because you are creating your own safety. You
Yep.
are not hoping that someone else isn't going to try to harm you or overwhelm you, because we can't control other people. We learn how to create our own safety, and then we become liberated, we become freed from the stuff that other people might say about us, because we can't stop that.
Yeah.
We know what
Yeah.
expectations someone else might have, criticisms that they might have, judgments they might have, because we can't stop any of that.
Yeah.
Mel Robbins says, let them, right?
Yep.
And I believe
Yep.
there was someone else, before her, whatever, that said to let them. That's a boundary statement.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets back to how I teach people about boundaries, and we can get into that later if you want to. But what inspires me the most is being able to watch my clients and my patients become stronger, become just liberated from all of this. uh oh my gosh, I have to do what they say. I have to I have to keep the peace. All of these things are just like, but you can't keep someone else's peace, you can only keep your own.
Mhm.
And so it's like the people pleasing tap dance of, I've
Mhm.
got to keep everybody pleased, I've got to keep everybody pleased. So a boundary helps them to understand how to do that and to keep doing a good job. Because I run into this in corporate spaces where they're like, well, now, Dana, boundaries is going to just tell somebody that they don't have to do their job. No. When you're practicing healthy boundaries, it ensures that you will be able to continue to do the
Yeah.
job 2 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road. You're not going to get overwhelmed and burnt out and quit.
Well, and wouldn't you even say, Dana, you're going to be able to do your job more effectively because you
Yes.
set boundaries? You're going to be far more
Yes.
effective at your job.
Oh, Kevin, the what I get to witness people, it's just amazing. I love it because you see how we function at work impacts how we function at home.
Yeah.
And how we
Yeah.
function at home impacts how we function at work. We are one human being that is in both of those worlds.
Mhm.
And so if we have ineffective boundaries in either area, it affects the other one. And then the other one ends up affecting the other one. And so it feeds back and forth. And so if you have healthy boundaries in both areas will rise.
Mhm.
Likewise, if you don't know how to set boundaries at work, you're not going to know how to set boundaries at home. And then both of those areas feed off of each other and they go in a downward spiral.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can
Yeah.
help people not do that.
Yeah. 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 I used to be that guy in that spiral 22 years ago. I remember it distinctly. I was at work again on a Sunday and running the business and um, just kind of had a breakdown, just a meltdown. And I'm like, man, because I didn't want to be there. I'm like, what are you doing? And I was like, this, you know what? This is not what I wanted from this business. But it occurred to me, as like, you know what? You never actually made any plans of like, what do you want from this business and how do you want this business to fit in with your life, you know? And and once I started doing that and coming up with some boundaries, now some of my boundaries are that I end my workday every day at 3 p.m. because that's when my kids get home from school. And then it's I want to be there for them for their sports for whatever's going on, you know. I don't work weekends. I haven't worked weekends for 22 years, you know. And you know what? And it's no big deal because even when people try to say, "Well, Kev, let's make an appointment to talk at 4 o'clock," I'm like, "Well, that won't work for me." But when's the next time you have available? Sometime between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. You know. And same thing if they want to schedule a time on a weekend. Same thing. Well, what's the next weekday you got available? You know, they'll be okay with it. You know.
Yes.
But I'll tell you that just that one example right there has made such a world of difference, you know.
Mhm.
And like you said, it doesn't just affect our word, it totally impacts our home life and our family life and the relationship that I have with my wife and my kids and my
Yep.
grandkids. You know.
Exactly. Because imagine if you end up with a negative, an upsetting, conflict filled relationship with your spouse and your children, then you're going to go to work. And what's going to happen if you imagine you have a mental pie, right? And there's slices out of your mental energy. And so, if we are dealing with a lot of conflict at home with our spouses, with our partners, with our children, when we go to work, we do not have access to all of the mental energy that we could have because part of our brain in the background is processing that conflict.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
thinking
Yeah.
about the argument that you had as you were going out the door. You were thinking about the argument that you had the night before. You're thinking about the silent treatment that you were given or that you were giving someone else. There's a part of your brain that is going to be processing that information in the background. It's almost like having a program on your computer and there's a program running in the background that's pulling the bandwidth.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it's like when you don't address. If you think these two areas aren't connected, you're wrong. They're
Yeah.
very connected.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's dig a little deeper into this and what's a result? And you don't have to name names here. I mean, if you want to, you can, but if you don't have to, what's a result that you have helped a client get, Dana, that you're just incredibly proud of?
Oh, wow. Gosh. Um, One of them, she had a she had basically shut down
Okay.
because she was at work and people around her were taking advantage of her. She was a very kind person, very lovely, very kind person, very kind. And so other people, her coworkers, were taking advantage. She had like sort of like an office share area, and her coworkers were leaving like dirty junk behind that she was having to clean up, and it was making a bad impression with her own clients. And also because she didn't know how to set boundaries, right? So that was going on at work, and she was very close to quitting because
Okay.
she just couldn't handle it anymore. She was looking bad to her clients. She didn't feel comfortable saying anything to her coworkers. She felt like she was caught in a cage. She couldn't do anything, say anything because she didn't know how.
Mhm.
And likewise at home, she had a terrible relationship with her father, who happened to be rather dysfunctional. And he would demand things of her and say things to her that were not particularly healthy or appropriate. But she did not know how to set that boundary with him. So she just avoided him.
Okay.
That's how we do when we feel ineffectual, when we feel like we don't have tools, right? We just avoid. We try to avoid the scenario. That's why people end up quitting. They're called the quiet quitters. They don't
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
anything. There's not any conflict. They're not going to come to you and yell at you. They're just not going to show up next Monday,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the situation that she was in. She did, and also she didn't know how to set boundaries with her friends who were wanting her to do things that she wasn't comfortable doing. And so, since she didn't know how to say no, she just avoided them too. So,
Wow.
she was isolated from her friends. She was avoiding her father. Her parents were divorced. She was about to quit her job. It was just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the more she came in, and that's one of the reasons why I guess I've ended up with this moniker, the Queen of Boundaries, is because when someone starts kind of vomiting out all of the things that they're struggling with, my brain automatically, the first thing it does is it divides out, okay, what of all of this is actually the client's responsibility and the client has agency to do anything about, and what is someone else's problem? What is not my client's issue? Because frequently what they do is they get those reversed. Rather than seeing the agency that they do have, they're too busy focusing on what they don't have any control over, which is
Yeah.
the other person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they just grind themselves into the ground. So I started working with her and teaching her how boundaries work and training her. And she started doing the homework assignments, which I love to give. And so there has to be an application, right? You can't just chitty chat. There has to be application that you have to be able to take what we say in the office and do it in your real life. Otherwise, what's
Mhm.
the point? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she was doing the application assignments, and then little by little we take small bites because when someone hasn't been doing these things, it's hard.
Yeah.
And so she would do it slowly, then she would come back and she would tell me what happened. I would give her feedback. Slowly but surely, she was able to have conversations at work, very
Mhm.
respectful, calm conversations at work. And so the coworkers began understanding where she was coming from. They understood how their behavior was impacting her. So they changed their behavior. She didn't quit. She actually was thriving more at work and getting more clients. Her relationship with her dad improved because he understood, because she started training him, that he was not going to get by with the inappropriate, dysfunctional behavior with her because I taught her how to do that. So she was able to interact with him with healthy boundaries. And she also found a whole new friend group because the friend group that she originally had, they were not going to hear her no's. When
Okay.
she would try to say her no's and express her opinions and her preferences, they just simply didn't care. And she
Okay.
learned that about them. You don't know that until you try to say no.
Sure.
How are they going to respond? They might say, "Oh, I'm glad you shared that. Thank you for letting us know.
Mhm.
We'll change what we're doing because now we know what you want." Or
Mhm.
they can say, "Screw you. We're doing this anyway. We don't care what you think."
Mhm.
Well, she found out, and so she started curating another group of friends, and so she ended up just she didn't need to come to therapy anymore. She did that, and now she's doing great. So that's
Wow.
one of the
Wow.
stories that I just love.
That's a great story. That is an awesome story. I mean, talk about being able to empower someone to just live their best life,
Yes.
and have just amazing relationships instead of relationships that are just one way.
Mhm.
And yeah, what I mean, what a transformation. What a
Oh,
transformation. Well, okay, so now that we've got some context set here and people know what you're all about, Dana, and kind of, I want to switch gears just a little bit. I want to start talking about the relationship side. And so, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons who completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Well, I've been thinking about this, Kevin,
Uh-huh.
and so okay, I'm going to give you a two-folded answer.
Okay.
On the one hand, what comes to mind, there's two situations. One, Yolanda Harris, which Susan Winchester also knows.
Uh-huh.
She works with the Keynote Group, and she was the one that rebranded me about 3 years ago. Maybe it's been 3 years. Yeah. And time flies, we were saying earlier. Um, she took me through this rebranding process because here I was this therapist and I was doing podcasting. Well, I had a podcast guest that said, Dana, I think you need to talk to Yolanda. And so I'm like, okay, I love people. I love forming new relationships. Let's
Mhm.
go. And so I reached out and had to go through this interesting vetting process because, Yolanda's not going to just going to take any old person that comes along. You have to vet once you like
Yep.
I vet people for my business, because some people might have an issue that I can't really help them with.
Totally.
And so I got through that vetting process, and Yolanda, bless her heart, she was very patient with me because sometimes I'm not easy to deal with. Sometimes I can be very impatient and I can be very um, just passionate and I can get loud and obnoxious and all the things,
Mhm. Mhm.
especially if I'm frustrated.
Okay.
And she was there and she kind of helped me begin to see myself as a keynote speaker and facing all of the imposter syndrome that eats you alive
Mhm.
and venturing into that whole arena of people that are doing that when you feel like you're such a baby at it. You're just a teeny tiny baby learning so much
Yeah.
and exposed to these people who are giants in the field, and you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, how in the world am I ever going to be able to do that?" And she was so kind and patient with me as I was going through that process and didn't let go because I sometimes I told her, I said, I sit in these meetings with you and I feel like my head is full of wet wool. I said, I'm trying to listen to what you're saying, but my background is clinical psychology, and my brain does not think like your brain. And she's in marketing, right? And so she was trying to help me with all the things. And I said, I feel like every other word you say is Russian. And I'm trying to follow what you're saying by piecing together things, feeling like every other word is Russian. I can't even. And she just never let go. She just kept going and kept going. And so she would be the first person that
Okay.
I would say.
Okay.
Um, then I was led into another group called Mic Drop Workshop, which
Okay.
I later went into Mic Drop Academy, which you have to be approved to go into the academy. The academy is like the Navy SEALs of the group, but Jess Ekstrom, and she's been really getting some attention and dutifully. I mean, she should be. She's amazing. She's an amazing businesswoman. Her heart is for women speaking, and she's been in the business, I think, about 12 to 13 years now.
Okay.
And her team of people really is something else that helped me to continue moving forward and seeing myself in this area. Now, I want to take a moment and say that the flip side of my answer to your question about relationships
Mhm.
is that the person who really, if this individual had not been in my life, I would not be what I'm doing right now. And it's may or may not be for the reasons that you suspect,
Okay.
is my mother.
Okay.
And my mother struggled. She has since deceased, but she struggled with pretty significant mental issues. And it monopolized our home, it enmeshed our family. And so I was in a scenario where there were no boundaries and I did not know it. And I was struggling. And then one of her sisters gave me this seminal book on boundaries written by doctors Henry Cloud and John Townsend. I think it was like 1992. And when I read that book, Kevin, I felt like the clouds parted and the sun shone down. I'm like, what is this magic? What
Wow.
is this magic? I, what do you mean I can say no? What do you mean I'm not responsible for all of her feelings? She had a lot of very large, big feelings, and her feelings and her emotions and her moods dominated our entire family. Nothing mattered quite as much as my mother's moods and what she did when she was in those moods. Everything else was secondary. And I was kind of raised up to feel like if she was upset, it was my fault. I was firstborn and I was a female. And so I was raised up thinking, okay, if my mother's mad, if she's upset, if she's cussing, throwing things, I've had plates thrown at me, all kinds of stuff, that I thought, well, it's my fault that she's upset and it's my job to make her better.
Yeah.
And I grew up thinking that. And when I learned how boundaries worked, it was just like somebody, like I said, just showed up with magic.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
thought, this is absolutely amazing. And so when I am able to train my clients and my patients, I'm telling you, Kevin, I have been
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
There is virtually nowhere, nothing they can experience, nothing they can come in and say that they have gone through that I haven't personally experienced.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's not just the professional understanding of it. A lot of
Yeah.
people have that. It's a very personal walk that it's not really the answer to your question, I would imagine, that a lot of people would give, but my relationship
Agreed.
with my mother absolutely transformed the direction of my life.
Yeah. And I can only imagine that transformation must have just felt like this weight being lifted off of you.
Mm.
And according, I mean, no, wow, it's no surprise that you do the kind of work that you do after hearing that story. Because like you said, yeah, this impacted you personally on such a deep level that you're like,
Hmm.
wow, I want to help other people experience this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah,
Yes. Part of some of these personal stories I weave into my keynote because I feel like it's important when you are delivering a keynote to someone, to a group, that you share parts of your personal journey
yeah,
and
yeah,
you share vulnerabilities and you share things that have happened to you. And so there's a few of these stories, and some are funny and some not so funny, that I kind of weave in so that they understand, why am I even talking about this? Why am I so passionate about this? And why does it make a difference to anybody? And I can explain all of that very, very well.
yeah, yeah. So now I'm curious, how long after that experience did you actually get into doing the work that you do, and kind of I'm just here because did you realize in that moment, like, oh, I want to do, I mean, how did it play out that you got, from the time you had that experience to the time you got into doing this kind of work?
Hmm. Well, it was decades,
Okay.
obviously, with my mother. And then when I got into, I actually, looking back now, I feel like that I ended up in psychology because a part of me, again, goes to the mental boardroom, a part of me that resides in my mental boardroom, we all have one, whether we're aware of it or not, was telling me, you know what, Dana, if you can understand something, if you can break it down into pieces and figure it out, that means you can get ahead of it and you can keep yourself safe.
Okay. Okay.
So that's what my experience was like with my mother, that if I could just
Mhm.
analyze her behavior and figure it out and get ahead of it, then I could keep myself safe. And so that mentality led me into clinical psychology. And so then I had my degree, and I had a private practice for a while.
Mhm.
When my aunt gave me that book on boundaries, and then it was just like I said, clouds parted, sun shone down, and thinking, oh my goodness. And it
Yeah.
was just kind of like the stars aligned. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking,
Mhm.
wow. And I started seeing other people suffering from what I had suffered from. And I'm like, not on my watch.
Yeah.
Mm-mm, no, sir.
Yeah.
Not on my watch. No, we are going to have a discussion. We are going to have a talk because I know what's going on here, and if they want to change, it's their choice. But if they
Yep.
want to
Yep.
change, I'm
Yep.
right there helping them to figure out how to
Yeah.
not be victimized
Yeah.
in that way. Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Well, for anybody who might be listening to this, because a lot of entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs listen to this podcast. And so,
Hmm.
for anybody that might be thinking, man, Kevin, I really like Dana. I like who she is. I love how she shows up. And man, maybe, maybe I should be, maybe she might be able to help me out. Or maybe I've got a friend that I'm thinking of that like maybe there's somebody I should connect with Dana. Any website, any resources we can share with folks?
Absolutely. So if they go to my website, which is just my name, danaskaggs.com,
Okay.
a couple of things. You can do danaskaggs.com/quiz.
Okay.
If somebody wonders, I think I might have some boundary issues, but I'm not sure. I've got a quiz you can take that gives
Perfect.
great feedback. And also there's coaching on there. There's courses, there's also one-on-one coaching that I provide people. So if
Okay.
they're thinking, I'd like to just connect with Dana and just sit down and just do one-on-one Zoom, tell her kind of what's going on in my life and see if there's anything that I can do differently to make me, be able to function better, have better conversations, show up better in team meetings, to be able to lead better, to not be kind of overcome or obstructed by these parts in my mental boardroom that I'm not even aware that are in there that are obstructing my ability to be my best self.
Mhm.
I can coach, I can help anybody in that way. I'd love to.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I will make sure that we include that in the show notes. And so anybody listening to this at this point, you'll have easy access to that. It'll be right there. Just all you got to do is click and it'll take you right to Dana's website and stuff. Dana, is there any last thing that you feel led to share before we call it a wrap?
Uh, One last thing is to entrepreneurs, because I'm one as well. And I just want to give a nugget about taking small steps and having grace. Because when we're an entrepreneur, it's so easy to get overwhelmed because we're just out there. It's almost like jumping off a cliff, and we're kind of figuring out the parachute on the way down
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And so my words of encouragement would be just to baby steps. Take baby steps and just keep going.
Yeah.
Baby steps and keep going.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's actually a boundary lesson right there.
Mhm. Well, Dana, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you. And I'm excited to get this out there and share it with other entrepreneurs because I feel it's going to be really well received and stuff. I think there's a lot of people that are going to be like, you know what? I get what she's saying. And so thank you so much, Dana.
It's been fantastic, Kevin. Thank you for having me on your show.
You bet.